Welcome to a new episode of the Creative Industry Insight podcast. I'm your host, Bobby. Today, the doors of Saltburn have stayed open for us as we welcome costume designer Sophie Canale. In this episode, Sophie will discuss the creative process that was required to create various costumes for the film. Please be warned that there are heavy spoilers in this episode. Now let's jump into the conversation with Sophie. Hi Sophie, thank you for joining me today.
My pleasure. Lovely to meet you.
We're here today to talk about Saltburn, which feels like a recording that's been in the making a bit of time, mainly because I've had your agents help me. I've had Deanna, who's sitting in. Thank you very much for helping us out to organise this. So it kind of feels like I've had a lot of chefs help me create this gourmet meal of an episode. So hopefully I won't fail.
I'm sure you won't. No, this is brilliant. I'm so glad we've got this opportunity.
As I said earlier, we're here to talk about Saltburn, which has just had its wide release in the US on Thanksgiving, and it's been out in the UK a number of weeks. It also had one of its premieres at London Film Festival. How have you found the reaction to the whole film and having the premiere at something like London Film Festival?
I think it's fantastic to be able to open, a British film at the British Film Festival, at the London Film Festival. I think that's a prime place for it to be opening. I've seen the film 4 times in varying kind of audiences, shall we say, and I really love the reaction that is withheld within the cinema. The gasps, the silences, the laughter. I haven't, it's like going to the theatre, I feel, rather than the cinema. There's such a reaction from the audience, which is fantastic.
Do you find that as like with different audiences, you get different reactions? So I know I saw it at one of the screenings at London Film Festival. It was sold out, and yeah, it's one of those films you should see with audience, because it's those reactions where if you're by yourself, it's like, am I allowed to laugh at this, or would I be too morbid to laugh at this? But I guess once you start hearing other people laughing or gasping, then you're like, okay, I think I'm in the clear to do it.
Yeah, I think it really appeals to, certain things, different things appeal to different ages. So, and you can really kind of hear that within the audience as well. And I've always treated it as a period piece, 15, 16 years ago, but things have changed and developed so quickly that, from a costume point of view, obviously the fashions have changed, but I think there are so many elements that the laughter and the grimaces and things like that, it brings reaction, it evokes. Also, so many people have said to me the following morning, following day, people are still thinking about it. It's a film that really provokes thought and is just holds with people, which I think is really exciting. And Emerald's such a clever writer and director that she's been able to kind of evoke so many emotions in people.
I think this is, as one other guest told me this, that the director they're working with, Paul Schrader, said that a film starts once you leave the cinema. And I guess when you evoke so much reaction, if it's positive, negative, people are still talking about it and still thinking about it now. And I guess that's like the power of films. It's like something, I don't know, you can't replicate that in any other mediums. I guess with film and TV. I guess with music, it's slightly different because it's more like a cognitive function that you'll remember songs later on, and your brain will process it slightly differently. But again,
with cinema, you have so much. You have the music, you have the visual. You take so much away from it, and I think it's a really clever thing to be able to do. And Emerald really captured people with this film.
And I think on top as well, if you're watching it, because films should be really for repeat viewing, because there'll be things that you can always pick up on and catch. So for something like this, there's always like the little hints that might be spreaded in, or the little things that you might pick up on again, or even like sound cues as well, that you might miss about what's happening here, what's going on here, which is also something that will stand out when something like this.
Yeah. I also like when you're looking, visually at the film, it's really interesting to have the contemporary clothes in the juxtaposition of these period universities and the house. It's got this really, often when we think of these period, buildings, our mind goes back to, the 40s or 18th century, the periods that they were built in. And it's really interesting to have the 2000s, something so relatable and nostalgic at the same time, though, to a lot of the audience, in the sense of the mobile phones, the clothing, the television, the film that's shown in Saltburn. There's a nostalgia in it to an audience that is still can relate to, but also having the period houses and the sets is nostalgic with English society.
I think the funniest thing, I know we're slightly jumping, but the funniest thing about watching a film from an era that I grew up in as a teen, and like friends and family around me, is the little nuances that you put in. So it's like the Ugg boots at the time that it was like mad craze at the time that people were going for, and then also seeing like the juicy couture tracksuits that I think it was like Paris Hilton that really started that trend, and that sort of look, and then also the polo shirts. I remember one of my friends going to Sports Direct getting a YSL polo shirt jumper baby blue combo, and kind of thinking about all of that, and it's just sort of looking back at it, you think, man, like, I don't know if you kind of look at it, you think, were we actually really cool, or did we dress really horribly at the time? I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. And like the Live Strong band as well, I think, which Felix wears, and he also has a Help the Heroes band. It's those little details that really capture the time, but also capture people's personalities in how we were and are as people. So those accessories, all the devil in the detail when it comes to costume, I feel.
Yes, and it makes me laugh a little bit as well, is the as you said, those bands as well, like they were all the craze. And I remember like Nike made a special like edition band as well, just only releasing 500 or something stupid like that. It's all those little things as well that helps build the character, and also the eye to detail that you're inserting, and knowing that like from the planning stage to when they step on set in their costume, there's so much going on around there as well. Before we dive into the costumes themselves, how did the project come about for you, and what made you want to take it on?
And it was the first script I'd read after working on Bridgerton, and it was amazing. And I'd watched Promising Young Women and loved Emerald's work, and I just felt like it was a project that was really for me, and the writing was just incredible. So I pitched for it, and a lot of my mood boards for my interview were my friends on Facebook. I really like the reality of clothing. That's what I like to portray on screen. I think it's really important. And Emerald, and she likes a ladder and a tight and realism, and not everything sitting perfectly. Clothes are there to move. It's not editorial. And I just I had my interview with Emerald, and we really clicked on that part that she wanted to portray reality in clothing. So we went from there.
I think when you start talking about getting your research from Facebook, that again, that make me laugh as well, just because it's the tool of the time. During that time, Facebook, you would always everybody would have their, what is it, not disposable, but like the pocket sized digital cameras that everybody would take everywhere, and then upload their nights out after.
And also there was no holds bar. Like everyone put up every photograph. It wasn't like, oh, I don't want my bosses to see that, I don't want anyone to see this. It was just like, no, they're the photos I took that night, and they're all going up there. So I thank my friends for doing that, because it was great research for me for this job. I got in contact with people who were at Oxford and Cambridge during those years. They were friends of friends, and went through all their kind of summer ball photographs and everything, and was able to kind of take I really wanted to get that niche, couple of years, because things can change so easily in a matter of years. So yeah, they were a really good help, and the student union as well, going onto their websites of the time really helped to get those student looks.
It's amazing how you could say as well, like when you're talking to friends, how we used to post pictures, as you said, no problem. Now it's don't post anything because we don't want to get in trouble,
Well, exactly.
which has
And I
lost a bit of
tell
fun
people,
of it.
yeah, and well, social media was so new, everyone was slightly naive to it, I feel, at the time. So, so much has happened within the last 15 years and everything's developed. Yeah, and I think everyone was so excited about getting in contact with old school friends or, people that you traveled with. It was a real tool. And so people wanted to share their lives with people that they may not have seen.
Yeah, and to kind of look back at, like, because in the UK we don't really have the school reunions like in America. So I guess Facebook was always a good tool of, oh, what's this person
Yeah,
up to?
definitely. Yeah. And it was just exciting at the time that this platform the world became smaller, over a matter of weeks, months, and then before you knew it, everyone was on Facebook and everyone knew what everyone looked like again. So yeah, so it was and along with Facebook, I also used a lot of editorials. I think looking at Vogue, being able to see who in society was in the it crowd, which actors, musicians, looking at Kate Moss and Lily Allen and Keira Knightley and, Sienna Miller of that time. And also then with the research of having Vogue online and Vogue magazine really as a platform to see what collections were out and then contact fashion designers and fashion houses and go back into their archives and we're able to, be able to loan costumes from Agent Provocateur, which were, Amy Winehouse had worn in that, in those years. Christopher Kane was on the catwalk, Venetia wore, 2 pieces of Christopher Kane, so did Pamela. And Chanel were very fortunate to go back into their archives. So it was really nice to have, I think when you're doing contemporary pieces, it's magazines, online, all of that is such a useful resource, rather than going back to books necessarily.
What I'm curious to know about as well is, like, how do you approach fashion houses and sort of discuss your ideas and potentially getting pieces from the times? Is it a case of something that you've built up over the years as contacts, and then obviously there must be some sort of legal thing where they have to discuss about the usage of these items because they don't want their dress being used for something that could completely damage their brand, for example?
Oh, of course, there are always legal obligations within what's happening within the script pages and things. So yeah, it's a discussion. I was very fortunate. Emerald had lots of contacts within fashion houses. So, we discussed which I reached out to a lot of people and they were so generous, everyone coming back, wanting to be involved in Emerald's project. So, and then because I was working to a period, it was very much, what was available from their archives of that time, or how close could we get it to 2006, 2007. So I very much treated it like a period drama rather than kind of taking things from their current collections. So it was going into the archives and also knowing and understanding a character, being able to kind of brief people, also setting the scene and the color palettes within the scene I wanted. So yeah, it's as in the same sense of a making, and designing, it's still making sure that everything works as a collective.
I guess in my mind, like, as someone who's not well versed in fashion, shall we say, and someone who doesn't necessarily have an eye for it, and that's more on me because I don't know, it just, maybe that's just, I like what I like and that's it. If something's comfy, I'll go with it. But when it comes to something in the film, so for example, we'll jump to Elizabeth's character, who is she's always dressed very, very well and has a very distinct look to her. I think there's like the backstory was like she used to be a model and hang around certain crowds. How do you go about designing the look for her? But then also, how important is it for the materials to look like that they've come from like a high-end fashion house?
It's looking at different brands and building a collective. So instinctively, I wanted to have this relaxed look for Elspeth. There was, a bohemian kind of edge, this grand house that she was in, looking at James, who was kind of a lot more uptight and, very much dressed Piccadilly courtings man. I wanted to have Elspeth has lived, she's had her party days and still loves them. So it's still making her fashionable, but also a more relaxed kind of look as well. So I looked at, and it's constantly looking at designers within, it's getting into the character and looking out from their eyes of what they would pick. So, having some nice vintage Aussie Clark pieces. So going back into vintage pieces, but then really pushing the boat out with some fantastic Valentino as well. So for the parties, but it's just styling someone in mood boards. Originally, I just get some ideas together of how I want everyone to kind of, as their character. And then speaking with Rosamund as well about how she sees, Elspeth, and also with Emerald as well. So there was definitely always an element of kind of, I think I had like Florence the Machine, a very like kind of boho-esque, there were like Dolce & Gabbana was quite big at that time with floral pieces. And it was this floaty, I wanted her to float through the house as well. There was definitely the air of kimonos and things, a relaxed, in the same way that Jacob is so comfortable in their own skin. So, yeah.
Yes. I think there's just a lot to take in terms of always understanding the sort of various looks that one would go for. And then on top of that, the different scenarios in the film that will happen. So the times where they're sort of relaxing by the pool, for example, or just that sort of casual. But then in the evenings when they all have to dress up smartly for dinner as well, there would always be certain looks that Elizabeth would choose. But as well, you want to reflect it on the character that she is, that she is a bit of a free spirit.
Yeah, but also she takes so much pride in herself. And also there's a frivolous of money as well, that there's always these new looks. It's not necessarily repeating costumes as well, because you want to visually give the audience an idea of how much wealth they have. So, and it's buying a lot of items, and during the fitting process is really kind of bringing people, items together and establishing a look. But instinctively, I always wanted this kind of quite an element of bohemian at the back of her free spirit.
Yes, I think there's always like that element of, I have a free spirit, but I'm a free spirit because I'm quite wealthy and I can kind of do what I want, and
exactly
play with people in terms of, they're kind of like that. Our pets might be a slight loose term, should we say, for how people are treated and how they looked after. They're always happy to help until that person becomes a burden, like dear poor Pamela, for example.
Yeah, and I think, there's an openness, but I think there's also an excitement as well from her character as well. And then when I don't even think it's just, oh, move on to the next because someone else is more exciting, really. That's kind of how she rolls. She just wants to be in the center of the gossip. And if, she's had too much of one person, it's move on to the next.
Yeah, exactly. As we move on to the next set of characters, if we look at the, should we say, the younger cast, we sort of discussed earlier about the sort of clothing that people would wear during the time. So your polo shirts and juicy coutures and all of that. But then we have the character of Oliver, who there's obviously something up about him, and spoilers, he's in on what is happening and is manipulating the whole situation. Now, when it came to designing for him, he's technically in a costume already, in terms of it feels like he's in a costume within a costume, if that makes sense. So that he's playing up. Pardon?
When we first see him at the university.
Yeah, he's in that blazer sort of end tie shirt combo, thinking that this is how you're supposed to dress when you turn up to Oxford University and be the prim and proper person. And then you look around and everybody's very casual, so we say.
Yeah.
And whilst he kind of develops that, there's always like little comments about him being a bit off in terms of he gets his clothes from Oxfam, and also at the ball his tux doesn't fit. It's a rental. The leaves are slightly strong. Not leaves, sleeves, sorry. He, when it comes to designing these things and thinking about the character and the turn of that he has during the film, how do you go about planning the costumes that he's going to wear and creating a color palette as well that's going to reflect the character that he is?
I think when looking at Oliver, I really wanted the divide between, social status and class. So everything that he wears is from the high street and kind of lower end, normal in a sense. It depends who you talk to. And the idea of him arriving at university with a blazer and the freshly bought scarf, the freshly bought tie, it's like, it's the first day of school and he has an idea in his head that this is how university is going to be. This is how he's stepping into a new world in his mind. And then the shock of everyone in their pajamas, Ugg boots, juicy couture is just like the unexpected. But also I think that's really clever in the sense that I think there is, there can be a divide and also a perception of how different groups are and how different classes are. So instinctively doing that with him, his costume also makes him sit out of place. But actually he's the working class lad, but he has dressed like he thinks that everyone else will dress, which is a lot smarter. So yes, we did that for a reason, just to kind of to get an understanding of how Oliver, was and his background, and the awkwardness as well that he feels as soon as he's there, realizing that this isn't the place that he thought it was. And then also going through his university days, there's very muted grays, greens, very basic kind of sweatshirt. There's a dullness to his check shirts. And that's what I wanted everyone to kind of perceive, that in comparison to the colourful kind of casual, there was still an uptightness about him, but also just quite bland, really. And then as he's, moving into the group and kind of getting into the world and the gang, his color palette kind of develops and is mainly in the blues throughout the whole film, really.
I think that's something that stands out is the blues that he wears and the sort of more of a navy color, which I can kind of relate to because a lot of my clothes are navy blue. So when I saw that, I was a bit like,
it's a very safe color and it's the most used color in fashion, really. If you go into any store, blue is constantly used. As a costume designer, it's always conscious effort when doing contemporary shows not to use so much blue because it's so easy to buy everything. But with Oliver, it was really wanting to make him ease and sit into his character, and also but not be too prominent as well with the characters around him. It's safe, it's a safe color, and I think that's how we wanted him to be. But also with the choices, you've got Felix in his Ralph Lauren and his Tommy Hilfiger and his Gant and Abercrombie's, but with Oliver, there's no logos. The polo shirts are plain. I didn't want to bring any labels or any distinction into any of his clothes because he's doing the cheaper version, basically. And that comment, gets his clothes from Oxfam, just literally his clothing isn't labeled, so they look down on that. If it doesn't have a label, then what is it? And especially with teenagers and university, when people are within their tribes and they have this etiquette, or labels matter, basically. So that's why I didn't use anything on him, even down to his shoes, really. So yeah.
Does that make it harder to buy for him, or does it make it easier because now so many different items of clothing have labels on them or little logos that they've sewn on? Or do you have to get someone to do a costume breakdown and unstitch labels or peel off the labels if they've been ironed on?
Yeah, you can't even do that because you can see where they've been. But no, it is yeah, we found a couple of brands, but it wasn't easy. Everything's for show.
Oh, that must be an absolute nightmare for the buyer to be like, I found the perfect thing, but there's a small logo
Well,
on it.
also it was really difficult for the buyers as well. One, because purchasing things on the high, I was treating this as a period drama, and these costumes were not in the they're not in the costume houses yet. They're not on the high street because the high street is either contemporary to now or the 90s are so back. So, and like the detail with even ribbing on t-shirts or the roundness of a collar or the deepness of the V. I'm very particular in how I see things. And, they'd come back and I was like, no, it's too contemporary or it looks too 90s. So, all those, details with the line that's within the imprint of a collar, polo shirt, we didn't have that. That's too contemporary. So yeah, I was so particular with these choices. So a lot of our buying was Vinted, Depop, eBay. We were buying clothes out the back of people's wardrobes. So yeah, it was wild.
Again, amazing to think that, like, even though it's contemporary and it's 18 years ago soon, that the film was set in, that it would be so difficult to buy clothes. But then also on top of that, costume houses do not stock anything, because I just think probably in their mind it's like people aren't going to be making films then. I think they're slowly going towards the 80s and 90s vibes.
Coming in, but like it's not the amount that we needed. So there was a few, I think it will be growing because from our stock and things like that. And but the high street, how people shop has changed so much in the time period. And there's so many brands that don't exist anymore either, so high streets change. We don't have Topshop, on the high street. We don't have Kukai, Jane Norman, Abercrombie and Fit, so many things have changed that it was really like using our resources well to be able to, literally buy them from people's wardrobes. It was pretty crazy and, a very time consuming challenge, but also great fun.
There must have been someone who was selling so much out of their wardrobe. They're probably thinking, finally, I can get rid of all of this. And then there must be some sort of lingering thing in their mind thinking, hang on a second, why are these people buying all my clothes? Hopefully it's not something weird.
There was a woman in Swansea that I ended up having communication with because she had so much stuff that I was like, I'm actually a costume designer, and can you just send me every photograph of what you're selling? And that worked out really well. So yeah.
I think she probably must have thought, I've hit the jackpot. Let's literally get everything.
Yeah.
But moving on to the other younger cast, so Farley. So we have Farley, Venetia, and Felix. We've touched upon them in terms of having very branded clothing, but then also I think their clothing will reflect how they are as people. So I think I read another article that you did an interview in where Felix's look was very relaxed. I don't really care, but there was always, even though I was relaxed, I don't really care look. A lot of effort has gone into it because it is the wristbands, it is the way that your collar is going to fall when you've got a polo shirt on. And then the same with like Farley, for example, that it is that, oh, I'm a kooky sort of person, but a lot of thought has to go into what they're going to wear, and especially depending where they're going as well.
Yeah, I think Farley and Felix are very, very different characters and approach their costumes and their fashion in very different ways. Felix loves his fashion, but has such an ease in being able to wear anything and in such a relaxed fashion, but not kind of over, it's a shirt, it's a pair of jeans, and it's a pair of loafer or trainers. He's done. And, those wristbands from his traveling, his gap year that he's just been on, they hold those memories. And also, I think there's trends that work with teenagers and with the Live Strong band, and also the Help the Heroes band. They were such trends of that period that he, would naturally, be the cool kid that would carry these trends that people would follow. So He's interested in clothing, but very much wears it with such ease. Where I feel that Farley, on the other hand, is so interested in fashion and wants to, he is my less period correct character within the whole film. And we really played with vintage pieces and modern pieces just to kind of give him this air of, he's just an interesting character that loves playing around with clothes. And also, he's a rule breaker in every single way. And that's nice to be able to portray that with clothing as well, that he, yes, has money, he loves fashion, but also that he doesn't want to he doesn't need to fit within the group. His rule breaking, he doesn't need to have the pop collared polo shirt, the same jeans as everyone else. He doesn't want to follow the crowd. He's the lone wolf. He's happy looking different and wanting to prove himself visually in different ways, because he's such a strong character in his own right.
Yeah, in terms of, like, you're right, in terms of he's a rule breaker and he's going to go for looks that really bring out his character. And I think he has those. I think what plays with it is, as well, is like you notice his height a lot more in the film compared to other characters. And maybe that's just me, because I try to be because I'm doing these recordings, I try to be as observant as possible. But you see that in maybe the way that his trousers fit and how they're a little bit shorter at the bottom. But please correct me if I'm completely wrong and I've missed it completely.
No. I think, both Felix, well, Archie and Jacob are a similar height. But I think probably you notice Archie's figure more because he's in a lot slimmer clothes, and which is kind of more of a contemporary or 70s inspired look, really, where the 2000s everyone wore baggy clothes. So having the distinction of the inspired 70s look on Farley is visually, just you kind of see it differently because it's so different to the 2000s baggier shirts and jeans and boot cut jeans.
His outfit is just perfect for who he is as well, and he looks really, I don't know, just looks very well put together, and very, in terms of like the color schemes as well, and the way that it fits. I don't know, just there's something about it that just like chef's kiss for him.
Yeah, I wanted Farley to have a distinctive style of his own, really, and not fall into the following the crowd and looking the same as the others within the group. And I think, we often, as people, end up wearing clothes similar to our friends, and we all end up in our little tribes, be it, I don't know, football casuals to punks to city boys. It's very much clothing represents who we are, but also often it represents who we're friends with. And definitely during the school years and university years, sticking out, often people do not want to do. Farley is the complete opposite. He is all about looking different and not wanting to be part of the crowd. Yes, with as friends, but visually, no, he's on his own path and he wants to look distinctive.
Yes, and I think it also reflects that as well, in terms of he's a slight outsider in the family because of his mum going off to America at a young age, and then he's come over and the family are looking after him. I also sort of want to touch upon towards the climax of not climax, but towards nearer to the third act of the film, where we have a Midsummer Night's Party. I think us in sort of British culture, it's like the whole, like, Shakespeare is something that's really important in terms of as actors learning it, but then also as audience members going back to see various iterations of his plays, if it's with going to the Globe or seeing it in the local theatre group. There's always like a new spin that people manage to put on his stories. Now, when it comes to something like this, where did you begin in your design process and understanding how you wanted to create your costumes using the Midsummer Night's theme?
I really wanted to initially look at individual characters for the Midsummer Night's Dream and see how they were placed. So, looking at Elspeth, for instance, and her being Titania, like the Queen of the Fairies. So, but still having this fashion element. So it wasn't necessarily, creating costumes for a theatre or for the play. It was very much taking hints and elements from the storylines and being able to put them to our characters, because at the end of the day, it is a 2000s fancy dress party. So having the opportunity to work alongside Valentino and be able to loan in a fantastic dress, which, was this beautiful gold dress for Elspeth, also had this amazing kind of leaf structure as well. It was very organic. And I think very much when looking at Midsummer Night's Dream, it was going back and looking at British folk inspiration and fairies, and I really felt that dress worked really well because of the texture and the kind of leaf pattern within it, and then just adding a simple detail of gold fairy wings, which are a jewelry piece which she wears at the top of her ears. So then that gives a subtle hint to the fairy world.
There's a lot that goes on in the designing part of that. And I like the gold dress Elizabeth wears is stunning, and it does look incredible. And as well, that like having those certain colours pop from going from that dusk to the sort of evening as well is quite a feast for your eyes to look at. But I think you look at all your pictures that you posted on Instagram, which again are really cool sort of pieces to look behind the scenes of how a costume is going to look on someone. And instead of, I guess, if you were explaining that they'll be wearing this sort of jacket, this, that, the other, you start getting these images in front of people, and then it's like you can really understand what you're going for from the designing to actually what happens on screen and the little details that you put in. So Oliver's, for example, on his jacket, it was something, I can't remember what's on it from the top of my head without having the image in front of me, but it was something to do with in war that they would have certain emblems on there to state that they've won. So I think it's something to do with like the branches.
Yeah, so originally I was looking at folk costumes, British folk costumes, festivals in different counties really, and coming across suiting and floral decoration within these period pieces and traditional costumes, and then wanting to have quite an iconic look for Oliver. Emerald and I were discussing him being in a lighter coloured suit. It was going to be shot at night, so we wanted him to stand out. And then having inspiration from images and paintings of traditional costumes. And within that, I was looking at the acorn and the oak leaf. And these are used very much as symbols within the military and also to represent power. And so I decided to kind of, there's an underlying element of Oliver that we're not quite sure of at that time in the film, but power is to come. And I wanted to have this kind of Easter egg of an underlying that he knows what he's doing. So yeah, using the acorn and the oak leaf was a kind of a symbol of power for him. So yeah, and also there are moths also hidden in the embroideries as well, because he is still that moth to the flame.
When you're adding these sort of little hints in, what are the discussions like with Emerald, and also maybe Linus, the cinematographer, then also with Sean Miller, the hair and makeup designer? Because obviously you kind of all want to pull in the same direction, but you're adding things in. So like a white suit, for example, a light might be bouncing off them, but then also if you're talking with Sean about the hair and makeup, how it's going to complement one another so that one doesn't sort of overshadow the other.
I think that's the amazing thing about working with Emerald, is that it's constantly able to collaborate and discuss things. Because she's a writer and director, you know, there's so much in, it's her baby, and you are able to really communicate and also, you know, collaborate together with camera tests. So the amount of being able to tech the fabric so it works in a sense that it doesn't bounce the light. Putting white fabric on the screen is not something we necessarily do unless, you know, we really want that powerful brightness. But with it's big, you know, the fabric was, you know, that suit was made, the fabric was dyed various colors, and then we would camera test them all in the light that we were going to shoot in. And also there is varying lights through those scenes, so we were able to, with Linus, to camera test it and then choose one that we thought was appropriate, and then start the making process. So yeah, so that's really, you know, it is such a collaboration with every single department to go through.
Yes, and even hearing about like camera tests where there's probably a lot that goes, there is a lot that goes into that, sorry, where you could probably play around with your looks and think, okay, yeah, we've nailed it, we've got it, we're going to be ready for day one of the shoot as well.
Yeah, and I think also colors and tones of costume is something that Emerald really likes to use for the tone of the scene. And, you know, on the day it was often which colored t-shirt should Barry wear as Oliver, you know, to really set the tone, or if we wanted to lift it, you know, was it a lighter gray, was it a dark? So, and I, you know, I really appreciate that, and I love working like that because I really think that the tone and color of the costume can really set the mood.
Yes, and I guess as well, like as an audience, it's like subconsciously colors will always pop out or feel a certain way and make you feel a certain way, which is always like, again, not to dive too much into the science of it all, but it's always incredible what the human mind can take in and what your senses can take in as well from what you're seeing.
Yeah, I think it's really important to use color as a tool to guide your audience into the emotion that you know, you want them to feel. I think it's really important. There's such a subtlety with colors, or you can be overpowered by color, and from both of those, you can, you know, really create different emotions. And that's with the lighting or the color of the costume or both. You know, it's very much a collaboration, but it's nice to be able to work within a, you know, within a team and have a all be based at the house. Our unit base was there, you know, we were always there together. It was very easy to communicate with everyone because we were all at the same location as well.
Yeah, and then if you're all in the same place, it definitely helps quite a lot going from experience. Just because I know we're slightly pressed for time, I did want to have, I do want to just speak about Venetia's outfit for the Midsummer Night's Dream, because it's a black dress with a spider sort of pattern, which feels like another sort of message for what's happening in the film, that people are getting slowly, the web of lies have closed in a little bit on Oliver, so we think, but then again, the web starts to grow big again later on. What was the idea behind that, creating that look?
Having discussed Venetia's costume with Emerald and wanting the cobweb dress to symbolize the web of lies, but also the, you know, the growing web of entanglement as well. So we found a really lovely image that inspired us and we discussed, should it be a knitted piece, you know, and then, but wanted it to be structural as well, rather than, you know, a print or something kind of flat. So then I spoke with very talented jeweler Fiona Barty, and we were able to collaborate together to create this, you know, jewelry piece of a dress, which was a separate cobweb from chains and using tiny dewdrops as crystals, but also as water that had been captured into this web. And I feel that the dress really needed to symbolize how how everyone was really feeling at that time. All these lies were going on around them, and it was just, maybe the spider that's within that dress is Oliver being able to spin his web of lives and take everyone around him into his web.
I think that's probably my favorite design out of them all, just because it's maybe just as like creatively is the idea of it, that the connotations behind it, but then also visually it does look really cool, and that it's all sort of spread out and has the complementary of like the black dress, and then the, what is it silver part of it, I guess. Might be the best.
So the silver chain, so there's a black dress underneath that we had made, and also the silver chain cobweb dress over the top. But Emerald still wanted this kind of 2007, like this sluttiness to it. So it was like, how low do we, how high do we go with the hemline? How low do we go? There was, we never, as much, it's a beautiful piece and a masterpiece. There were many, many fittings for this dress, because every time a chain was added, the weights changed, and being able to fit it onto Alison, so everything sat perfectly. But there was still an element that we didn't want to make it too glamorous. So the shortness of the black dress underneath, skinny straps, and, just the tightness then kind of gave it this kind of priceless cheapness in a way, which the dress is not by any means. For the craftsmanship is so beautiful in it. So it was a real challenge to design, but great fun.
Just to sort of piggyback on the challenge of it all, how do you go about doing something like that? Because there's always, I'm just guessing, this is just what I'm going to assume is that you would design it, and then once you have a fitting, you have an idea of how much you should cut and then doing another fitting with it? Or is it a case of taking an extra bit of time on it and working on how it should be sitting on the actor?
Every item of costume that you design and make works differently. Sometimes you can make something and it comes straight off the page and onto an actor's body and it works. I think with working as a jewelry piece too, it's very much a process of how working to the figure of the actor and how structurally you want to see it visually as it grows, really. So every single fitting, there were tweaks just because of the weight of the gems and the length of each chain. So there was a couple of fittings of a process, and then as soon as Fiona was who's extremely talented, had kind of got the look that I wanted, then she was able to run with that and then and do her magic.
I guess as a audience member, average Joe, you kind of don't think about certain things like that, and what would go into the design and how much needs to be thought about at the time, and sort of going from there as well, and the sort of intricate details and things that you've put into place as well. Because I'm guessing you'd have the black dress, but then the top silver part of the dress, is that created by hand, or is the whole piece sort of purchased somewhere that you can kind of add it on afterwards?
So with both the combinations of the dresses, one for Venetia, the black dress underneath was made by a costume maker cutter, and then the over dress is made by a jeweler, so by hand. So these are two separate items that we collaborate. We bring everyone together and then work together in making sure all the lines match. So initially being able to make the silver dress, all the chain jewelry, and then when that is at a certain stage, we were able to then fit that on Alison and be able to make the lines, understand the lines of where the black dress underneath needs to follow the neckline, needs to follow everywhere. So it's very much a collaboration, and the stages also change, because as soon as you add more chains to then the dress, the neckline may change. So, there was probably about 7 costume fittings for that dress alone, both those dresses alone, to collaborate together for them to make work, and also to make sure the movement works, and also, Alison to be able to move in it. These costumes, they have a job to do in themselves. They are worn, and everyone needs to be able to do movement and physically do anything in them. So, we have to make sure while in the fitting process that, as well as everything looks great, that they work.
That's a lot of fittings if people are coming in and out with it, and then the little details that if you have to add something on or even take stuff off, it must be like a bit of a sort of pull your hair out moments where you think, oh, this is going to be a bit too much, it's going to be a bit too much or a bit too little.
I think the process of costume design and making is, it's a long process. It takes time. It's haute couture. You're making to someone's body, but it is those little details. It's adding that one dewdrop. If that changes the weight of it, it's not going to be perfect. And, we're all perfectionists and love what we do. So it's just making sure and getting those fittings and making sure it's right.
Yes. And I guess that's like the art of your job as well, is the finer details that you put in, and being that sort of clay for an actor to add to their characters, to understand that even though this is maybe how they act, this is what they're going to be wearing, and what they're going to be comfortable in, and how they're going to look as well.
Yeah, it's a collaboration, and costume is very much being able the actors to step into literally someone else's shoes, and being able for them to develop their characters in clothing. And I feel that working alongside a director and actor, everyone comes to these characters with different ideas, and or the same ideas, but it's being able to make the actors feel comfortable in the characters that they're becoming. And I really love that moment in a costume fitting where you can really see an actor kind of go, yeah, this is it. This is the character. So it's a really lovely journey to be with them. And that's why I love costume design. It's about people, it's about characters. We all choose to wear the clothes we do every day. Some people think about it and some people don't. And I think I love being able to put that onto screen, if people, everyone's individual character and visually how they look.
I feel like that is the most perfect way to end this episode. Sophie, thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for speaking with me. And also thank you to Deanna as well for organising this. Saltburn is out now in cinemas. Go out, watch it, enjoy Sophie's work, and appreciate the fine craft and effort that she and her team have put into it.
Thank you.
Thank you again. You take care, and bye-bye. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast.